Well, the first trailer for Resident Evil 9 just dropped, and as expected, it looks amazing. But what has Capcom got hiding up their sleeves? Could the guy in the hood and sitting in the chair actually be the main villain for the game? Or is he just a side villain working for someone else? What we've seen so far appears to be just small hints and tidbits about the game, as much of the title, story, characters, and enemies remain shrouded in mystery. But I think I've figured out who the main villain of Resident Evil Requiem might be, but it's not who you think. I think the main villain of RE Requiem will actually turn out to be none other than Alex Wesker herself. Let's take a look at some hints, clues, and reasons why I think this may actually be the case here. For those who haven't played Resident Evil Revelations 2, or have simply forgotten about the characters and story of that game, Alex Wesker was the Overseer, the main villain of Resident Evil Revelations 2. Like Albert Wesker, she was raised as one of the Wesker children for Project Wesker by Umbrella founder Oswald E. Spencer. She was supposedly the best and most brightest of the Wesker children, even more so than Albert. Being part of Project Wesker, Alex and Albert were both infected with the prototype virus, a unique strain of the T-virus from the earlier RE games. And of the 13 Wesker children, only Alex and Albert survived. Albert got superhuman powers, of course, but Alex didn't, due to an incurable disease she had developed. After Albert was confirmed dead, Alex left Umbrella, establishing a base of operations on a Russian island. There she began researching a cure for her disease, while experimenting on the villagers of the island and using them as test subjects. Eventually, she discovered a way to digitize her consciousness and transfer it into a new host body, with a virus that could create a superhuman for this copied consciousness to inhabit. This would allow her to create a perfect new host for her to become a goddess and essentially achieving immortality by transcending her consciousness into a new superhuman body. The only problem with this virus was that the production of fear hormones in the candidates made it impossible for her to complete the 6 months transfer before the body ended up mutating into a monstrous form. With the help of Neil Fisher from TerraSave, she was able to narrow down her search to 3 final candidates: Claire Redfield, Moira Burton, daughter of Barry Burton from Resident Evil 1, and a young girl by the name of Natalia Korda. Alex captured them and confined them all to her island to test them and conduct her research, leading to the events in Resident Evil Revelations 2. Due to a childhood trauma, Natalia was unable to feel or experience fear, which led to her being the perfect candidate and host for Alex. She captured Natalia and uploaded her consciousness into her, then shot herself in front of Claire and Moira, ending her own life. However, that wasn't the end of Alex. During the final moments before she shot herself, Alex experienced a fear of dying that caused her body to mutate into a powerful, disfigured mutant. In the 6 months wait for Natalia's reawakening, Alex's old body, now in her new monstrous form, began to feel enraged and disgusted at having 2 versions of herself existing, eventually believing Natalia to be an imposter, unworthy of being the new host for a god. When Natalia wakes up 6 months later, she doesn't remember much from the ordeal, but has now developed heightened senses. She also begins having visions and hallucinations of a dark version of herself called Dark Natalia. This dark version of herself is Alex Wesker's copied persona and consciousness, who seeks to gain control of Natalia by leading her through the island in search of her teddy bear, Lottie. Around this time, Barry Burton arrives on the island in search of his daughter, Moira, who is still hiding out on the island. Alex's monstrous form tries to kill Natalia and the Burtons, but is killed by Claire Redfield, returning to rescue them. At the very end of the game, Natalia is adopted by Barry Burton and joins his family, but 2 years later in her room, we see her smiling a sinister smile and reading and quoting Franz Kafka, a famous author that Alex used to love reading and quoting. This ending basically confirms that Alex Wesker had succeeded in her plans of transferring her consciousness and persona into Natalia, and is now taking complete control of her. It's been 10 years now since the release of Revelations 2, and not much has been done with the storyline. We don't know what happened to Barry Burton, his daughter Moira, and Natalia, or Natalex, as fans now call her. There were rumors that Alex might be involved with, or somehow being behind the connections, but there were no signs or proof of this throughout the last few games. The last appearance we had of Alex was actually in Resident Evil Resistance, the multiplayer spin-off, which wasn't really considered canon. With RE9 Requiem supposedly being a conclusion to the main RE storyline and wrapping up all the character stories and loose ends, I'm starting to think that Alex Wesker in her new body as Natalia will end up being the main antagonist of this game, and I'm seeing major hints and clues that seem to point in this direction. The first major hint towards this is the 30th anniversary clip they showed on Summer Games Fest featuring Maggie Robertson. Not only does this seem to hint at her having some type of role in RE9, but if you look at her outfit, she's dressed up in an identical white business suit outfit that looks almost the exact same as the outfit Alex Wesker wore in Revelations 2. Her hair is also pulled back in a similar fashion, and her voice does sound a lot like Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, who has previously voiced Alex Wesker. Since Capcom has gotten new voices for most of the old cast over the last few years, and since they seem to like reusing actors for new roles, it makes sense that they will get Maggie Robertson back in another popular main villain role for this game, taking over the role of Alex Wesker to finally tie up loose ends and the Umbrella storyline from previous games. In a recent post leaker Dust Golem made breaking down the new trailer, he speculated that he also suspects that Maggie Robertson's appearance was because she will have a huge role to play in the game that is being kept under wraps for now. Maggie Robertson would also be the only person that I could see personally being able to pull off Alex Wesker after Mary McGlynn, since she has that same kind of mature, deep, commanding voice like Mary McGlynn. I mean, just listen to their voices.
Happy birthday to you. And to celebrate early, a special message from Takeuchi-san.
You're perfect. And the world is going to be very afraid. All this time wasted. My whole life has been a prelude to this. My true birth.
They sound pretty similar. Another clue or hint towards this is that the director of the game, Koshi Nakashini, was also the main director for the first Revelations game. Revelation games have always featured 2 or more main playable characters, like Chris and Jill in the first Revelations, and in Revelations 2 there was Claire and Moira, and Barry and Natalia. There's also the fact that Revelations 3 was in production for the Switch for a long time until it was cancelled. According to Dust Golem, around the time of RE8's announcement, he mentioned that Alex Wesker and her assistant Daniel Fabrone might be in the game, though this might have been misinformation he had mixed up from Revelations 3. If that info was from Revelations 3 though, it could mean that the story and characters could have been repurposed and used for this game instead, since Revelations 3 got cancelled. In a new post on his Twitter X account, Dust Golem stated that he thinks that some of the events and story of Revelations 3 that him and Jesse from Biohazard Declassified talked about a few years ago might have been repurposed and found its way into RE9 instead. He distinctly mentions that there was a demo for Revelations 3, and the demo was called Investigate, where you had to investigate and collect evidence. But the most interesting tidbit he revealed was that at the end of the demo, a black hooded masked man appeared behind Rebecca Chambers, strangling her until she was knocked out. He points out how similar this is to the black hooded man who strangles someone with a bag and kidnaps Grace in RE9. This could mean that if the black hooded man was a villain in Revelations 3 that was possibly working for Natalia or Alex Wesker and was somehow after Rebecca for some reason, then Capcom could be bringing these characters and plot points back and repurposing them for RE9. This could also be why we got Grace Ashcroft as the main character that takes over the role that Rebecca Chambers had in Revelations 3. Major hint that Twitter users MSawKZA and Resident BioEvil pointed out was that right before fighting Alex Wesker in Revelations 2, you could hear Alex Wesker playing Mozart's Requiem on the piano. This piece was written by a dying Mozart and went unfinished for years before finally being completed years after his death. Could the title Requiem be a hint to the game being connected to Alex Wesker and her goals now coming to fruition years later now that Natalia has possibly grown up? 2 minor things to also point out is also the close-up shot of Grace Ashcroft's eye, which looks discolored and resembles the Resident Evil Revelations 2 box art. Then there's also the weird woman seen walking down the hallway in the trailer, which could also be Alex. But as mentioned, these are minor things and could mean anything and still be completely unrelated. Still, the potential for Natalia and Alex returning and using Daniel or whoever that black hooded man in the chair and raincoat was is a huge possibility. Natalia could have returned to Raccoon City to find out more about Umbrella, or due to Alex's influence. She could be searching for survivors like Rebecca in the previously cancelled Revelations 3 and now Grace Ashcroft in RE9, people who are connected to Umbrella and the T-Phobos virus, leading her to getting the man in the black hood and raincoat to help her kidnap them. Now that I think about it, I think it makes sense that Natalex is using this man to help her find a new ideal host body for her to transfer her consciousness into after Natalia. Choosing Grace Ashcroft as the perfect candidate would also make sense, since her mother, Alyssa Ashcroft, was a survivor as well. She's often had people like Neil Fisher to help her choose, kidnap, and experiment on test subjects before, especially other survivors like Claire Redfield and Moira, the daughter of Barry Burton. So getting someone to kidnap others like Grace, and then having some doctors to help experiment on them for her, makes perfect sense here. This game is supposedly about facing the past, so this would allow us to find out more about Wesker, Umbrella, and finally give us closure to the whole Wesker, Connections, Raccoon City, and Umbrella storylines, and finally bring a satisfying conclusion to most of the main character arcs from the previous games as well. According to Dusk Golem, he thinks that hallucinations may also play a huge role in the game, with the game possibly being far more trippier and surreal than ever before, leading us to wonder if what we are seeing is real or not, and messing with us in these types of ways. This reminds me a lot of the hallucinations we experienced when we played as Natalia in Resident Evil Revelations 2, and its DLC, with Dark Natalia Alex messing with her mind. If Natalia and Alex are back, then it would make sense that Grace and Leon would also experience these types of hallucinations after possibly becoming infected with Alex Wesker's consciousness or a virus that allows her consciousness to begin taking over their bodies as new hosts or vessels for her. Anyway, I really enjoyed this trailer, and it got me pumped to see more, even though I'll probably have to wait to play it until the PlayStation VR 2 mode comes out like I did with RE8 and the Resident Evil 4 remake. Luckily, the game is fully playable in first person as well as third person, so there is definitely a good chance we may get the game in VR as well, which would be absolutely amazing because Resident Evil 7 in VR was absolutely terrifying. I feel like there's so much mystery surrounding the characters and storyline of this game, even though leaks point to the second main character probably being Leon once again. I never played Resident Evil Outbreak, so I'm a bit out of the loop on Alyssa Ashcroft, but having a new character like your daughter as a playable character in the game will be refreshing. I would have much preferred seeing Claire, Jill, Rebecca, or even Barry come back instead, but maybe they'll have cameos or appearances somehow. I think I even heard Jeff Shines as Chris or Carlos in the trailer as well. Since this is being made and directed by the same director as Resident Evil 7, which has become one of my absolute favorite Resident Evil games, I think there will be a greater emphasis on investigating and uncovering this mystery of the missing and murdered people, finding out what happened to Alyssa Ashcroft, and what's going on with this weird cloak guy and Grace. I think we've only seen a tiny part of the game and hints about the story, and I think there will be a lot more surprises and twists that are being kept hidden and under wraps. I also think that we'll probably be collecting and playing tapes and flashbacks to find out what happened with Alyssa, like in RE7. Because if you look closely, it looked like there was playable flashbacks in first person with us being a cameraman and following Alyssa into the hotel. So what do you think? Did you notice any hints towards Alex coming back as the main villain for this game, now being played by Maggie Robertson? Do you want to see Natalia and Alex come back so we can finally get the conclusion to the story from Revelations 2? I know this theory might be a bit far-fetched, but I'm really hoping that Natalia and Alex Wesker does return as the main villain in Requiem, because she's always had a lot of potential to be a great antagonist this time, and a nice surprising reveal for fans of the series, especially those like me who were looking forward to the third Revelations game that sadly ended up being cancelled. It would also make sense for one final Wesker coming back to tie everything together with Umbrella. That being said though, I did also speculate on Natalia and Alex possibly being Dimitrescu or Mother Miranda in Resident Evil 8, and that turned out to be completely wrong. So I could very well end up being wrong here as well. This was just a cool little fun theory I put together after seeing the new trailer. If you have any thoughts though, please let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this, please hit that like and subscribe for more content. You can also check out another of my theories here. Hope you all enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching everyone. See you all next time.